From one slain clan to another, Sasuke just can't catch a break. The premise of this what if is, what if Sasuke were an Uzumaki? How will that affect his story? Is vengeance still on the cards, or will he choose another path? That's the question indeed. But instead of going further, why don't we cut to the chase and begin the video? But first, let me say, welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you're subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. The pitter-patter of rain as it fell outside could be heard. Color had seemingly drained from the world as a dull gray seemed to absorb all colors around them. It was funny how rain could either produce a rainbow or sap all life from a scene. I suppose it's all how you view it. Rain can either symbolize peace and comfort, like the idea of a window, a warm blanket, and a cup of hot chocolate. Then there were some cases where rain was considered a bad omen, such as on wedding days. Today was one of those occasions. It was an omen of death, as if the heavens were weeping, as if tears fell to the ground to wash away the blood that had spilled. Inside the nearest hospital, cries of pain, anguish, and loss were heard as people's lives ebbed away. Fear, sorrow, death, that's what they were surrounded by. Welcome to Kusagakure, the land of grass. Not nearly important enough to be a member of the great ninja villages, but not insignificant enough to be ignored. A surprise attack had taken this somewhat happy village that had at a time been the best place for them after the fall of their own clan, and turned it into a war zone. Shinobi were coming every moment, wounded or dead from their defense of the village. Who was attacking? Why? All these questions eluded Sasuke and Karin as they took cover under a nearby table. Their mother was once more being used as a medical nin. She had no experience whatsoever, but because of her powerful chakra reserves, which granted those who took it in a form of regeneration, she was used to heal. It wasn't uncommon for her to be called up for service. Her body was ridden with scars in the shape of bite marks, but that's who she was. She enjoyed helping people, and though she had no choice, her hope to save as many people as possible pushed her forward. But just by looking at her, they could tell that she was growing tired. Sasuke and Karin, as young as they were, could tell something was wrong. How old were they? Karin was a bit older, maybe 9, and Sasuke had to be about 5. "Stop!" Sasuke cried out. "Mama, you can't do it anymore," he said, seeing how pale she was. Pale and tired. Sasuke, despite being Karin's little brother and the son of his mother, looked quite different from either of them. While they both had long, beautiful scarlet hair, Sasuke's hair was charcoal black. He took after his father, it seemed. Ever since the passing of their father, Karin and Sasuke were different. They seemed wary of the Land of Grass's shinobi. Word had spread that he was betrayed by his team in war. They used him as a scapegoat to get away, sacrificing him to the enemy to buy time to escape. No loyalty, none whatsoever. And now they were seeing it happen again. Despite the fact that their mother was giving her all to heal the shinobi, she was not afforded a break. She was already almost limp. She couldn't take anymore. Despite that, they still gave her over to people to feed off her chakra. They were using her up. She was running on fumes. Her emergency reserves being long since activated. She should be resting now, but no. What was the life of one immigrant to the hidden grass? She was here to serve a purpose, and if she couldn't fulfill it, then she didn't deserve to live there. That was the world in which they were. "Try again," the chief officer said, requesting that one of the wounded soldiers who had just bit into Sasuke and Karin's mother try again, since it seemed like there was no regeneration. The shinobi did as requested, only to find that there was no change. The officer checked. "Yup, she's dead." Karin heard what they said as tears welled up in her eyes. Sasuke was the same, tears rolling down his cheeks with the passing of each word. "What should we do with her?" one of the other shinobi said. The officer looked back at the shinobi and then at their mother and waved his hand. "Take her out back and lay her in the pile. We have no more use for her." The shinobi nodded and began to do as commanded. Watching his mother being dragged out, it finally hit Sasuke what was going on. His face scrunching up in sorrow, he reached out as if to grab his mother, who was now leaving his sight. "Mama!" he cried out. Karin freaked out and quickly put Sasuke into a death grip, covering his mouth to shut him up. "Quiet, or we'll be next," she whispered in a serious tone. Sasuke couldn't be consoled. He cried out, his voice muffled by Karin's hand. She could feel the saliva and mucus on her hand as her baby brother cried out. It was the most pitiful sound she'd ever heard. He hadn't cried like this, ever. Not even when they heard their father had passed away. Probably because he didn't see it happen, and probably because he still had his mother to comfort him. Now, he didn't have anyone. Karin didn't have anyone. She felt like crying too, screaming in anger at the world who took their last parent from them, but she held it together. She had to be strong for her brother. "We gotta get out of here," she whispered. "We need to leave the land of grass now," she told him. Staying in the land of grass would ultimately lead to their deaths. She didn't care either way about herself, but looking at her little brother, she didn't want him to suffer the same way. She began to sneak out from under the table. She looked to Sasuke. "Okay, Sasu, I need you to be a big boy. Please don't make any loud sounds. I'm gonna let go of your mouth. Try your best to be quiet, okay?" Sasuke nodded. Letting go, Sasuke tried to suck it up like a trooper. He wasn't able to stop himself from crying, but he was able to silence and muffle it, and considering the other sounds and ruckus going on in the makeshift hospital, it was possible for them to escape under that cover. Seeing the tent opening, they began to make their way toward it. Every moment they drew closer, Karine looked back to see if anyone were following them. The commanding officer wasn't paying much attention in their direction. "We're gonna make it," Karine said. That was when she bumped into another shinobi bringing in more wounded. He looked down and saw them attempting to escape. "Hey, Zasui, your charges are running!" Zasui looked back and saw Karine and Sasuke. Karine freaked out and attempted to run past the shinobi, but one of the wounded warriors reached out and gripped Karine's arm, pulling her in and biting her. Karine screamed in pain as Sasuke began to punch the man, demanding he let his big sister go. The man would not. His wounds were regenerating already, but in return, chakra was being sapped from Karine, wounds and scars left behind in their place. The moment the man let go, Karine attempted to escape with Sasuke, only to have her arm grabbed and yanked back by Zasui. Sasuke tried to punch the man right where he knew it would hurt most, but Zasui grabbed Sasuke's fist and lifted him up by it. Sasuke kicked and struggled, but Zasui didn't budge. "Nuh-uh-uh. You two aren't going anywhere. Not until all of our soldiers are healed." "You killed our mom," Karine shouted. "Isn't that enough for you?" Zasui looked at her. "No, it's not. Not until every soldier who's dying is saved." He tossed Karine toward another shinobi. "Use her now. She's got the same goods as her mother." The shinobi saluted and dragged Karine away to heal the others. "Please," she cried out. "Take me, but let Sasu go. He can't handle it." "What he can't handle isn't an issue of mine. It's what he can provide. And what he can provide is the same as you and your mother." Karine cried out for Zasui to stop, but the cruel and cold shinobi didn't seem to care. He dragged the struggling Sasuke over toward the nearest group of wounded shinobi and just tossed him in like a sardine among sharks. As Sasuke fell into the group, he tried to stand and run, but before he could, his arms were grabbed and he was pulled into the group. Sasuke kicked as hard as he could, struggling, screaming. Eventually his legs were grabbed too. Between being torn around and pulled by the vicious parasites who sought to use his chakra for their own benefit, the feeling of teeth ripping and tearing through his flesh was excruciating. The screams and cries of Sasuke echoed through the camp as Karine, being treated the same way, only caught a single glimpse of her baby brother. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she forgot about the pain of the teeth tearing through her own skin. It went on like this for the next couple hours. Screams and cries. Eventually, Karine would be let go as the last of the wounded shinobi seemed to be healed. Karine was lightheaded. She felt weak. Her legs could barely keep her standing. She had to be working on her reserves by now. She couldn't sense Sasuke anymore. Her heart dropped. What if he were dead? Among the many candle flames she sensed, that being the blue fires of chakra, she sensed nothing. No Sasuke. As she continued to walk around the camp, she stumbled outside into the downpour where she saw Sasuke's body lying limp in the mud. With what little strength she had left in her, she ran to him. Collapsing in the mud next to him, she reached out. "Sasu!" she cried. "Sasu!" Running over to him, she hugged her baby brother in her arms, cradling him close. She cried out, begging for mercy. "You can't take him too," she shouted. "Please, don't take Sasu away from me." She demanded, her urgent prayers reaching up to the highest points of heaven, her tears washing away the mud on her cheeks, indistinguishable from the rain. She felt invisible now. She felt as if her suffering were invisible. Like it didn't matter anymore. She'd been used up. The villagers of grass paid her no mind. If anything, their gazes seemed to show that she was an annoyance to them. In her arms, Sasuke's wounds continued to bleed, turning the water and mud pink, kissing his head and cheeks over and over again, as if hoping somehow the kisses would make the boo-boos go away. She knew better. She was running out of chakra, but she only had one idea left. She opened Sasuke's mouth and placed her arm inside. Taking a chakra-filled finger, she pushed the nerves of his jaw muscles, causing him to contract with force. There was a squish as more blood began to trickle from her arm. The pain was intense, but no pain was more intense than the idea of losing the only family she had left. "Please, Sasu, please, you gotta wake up." As his jaws relaxed, she pulled her arm back, but Sasuke continued to lay there unconscious, mouth agape. Laying him back flat, she waited to see if it would work. Placing her head to his chest, she sought a heartbeat, but heard nothing. Her heart breaking, she wished she had died instead. Laying her head down on his chest, her mind overflowed with the feeling of everything she had lost. She felt like finding the nearest river and jumping in. She wanted to die. As she laid there and wept, suddenly she heard it. Bump, bump. She quickly calmed. Was that? She lay her head close to his chest again. A long moment passed before anything else happened. Bump. There was a pulse. It was light, only every few seconds, but it was there. She put her arm back into his mouth. Sasu, do it again. Take more chakra. Take more. She caused him to bite again. Though she was quickly running on fumes, she was willing to give up everything so Sasuke might live. She was willing to die right here and now if it meant that Sasuke could walk out of here with his life. She listened to his pulse. It was slowly growing faster. She could hear respiration, but even still, it was hardly enough for him to live off of, and she herself was at the point she could die if she wasn't taken care of. Sitting up, she took Sasuke's bleeding and scarred arms and wrapped them over her shoulder. Struggling to stand, she fell face first into the mud, twice. But her sheer determination evident to all who looked on, she stood and began to limp off into the gray. She couldn't return to the village. It was a war zone. She needed to go somewhere else. She got on the nearest road heading east and began to search for a nearby settlement. As she walked, she started to move slower and slower. She was almost empty, and Sasuke, she felt, wasn't going to survive the night if they didn't do anything about it. But what more could she do? Neither of them would survive like this, and even if Karin gave the last remnants of her chakra to Sasuke, she still wouldn't make it. It looked like this was it. This was the end. As she stumbled forward, her strength gave out. Hitting her knees and falling forward, Sasuke rolled off her back, laying in the mud in front of her. She looked up at her brother before her. Her heart beginning to fail, she could feel less and less blood making it to her brain. She reached out with the last of her strength and took Sasuke's hand. As her vision clouded, she attempted to speak. It wasn't her voice speaking anymore, though. The best she could do was speak in spirit. Sasu, I'm sorry I failed you, but I won't let you pass on alone. I'll go with you. At about that moment, she closed her eyes. Her sleep was dreamless. She didn't have the chakra to dream. She didn't even have the strength to hallucinate. Or at least she thought she didn't. She thought she heard a squeaking and squishing, a distant voice. She couldn't feel anymore. All she felt was a hollow cold that she couldn't even shiver from. Her eyes opened for but a moment. She saw a hooded man, robed, holding her. The rain had stopped some time ago, and only a fog was present. For a moment, Karin was certain she was dead. She was laid down in the back of what seemed like a wagon. Sasu, she said, her tongue slowly forming the syllables as what little breath she expelled became a word. She was resigned to her fate. The next time she woke up, the area was illuminated by candlelight. As she opened her eyes, she could hardly move at all. She seemed to pass out again. Things remained like this until the next time she woke up. When she did, she felt her strength return to her. She was able to sit up now. As she did, she saw to her left her brother lying on a bedroll. You really should be resting, the man said. Karin looked over and saw what looked like a monk meditating. Who are you? She asked. The man who rescued you. I am Chukaku, the head monk of this monastery. Karin looked over at him for a moment before back to her brother. Is Sasu okay? The elderly man ventured a bit closer. He had many wounds. His arms and legs were bitten many times. He had a few marks on his shoulders and neck area as well. Not unlike you, he said, pointing to her bound wounds. Why were you both covered in such wounds? He asked. Were you near victims of cannibalism? Karin shook her head. No, though it could be considered something similar in a way, I suppose. She looked around. You said monastery. Which one? It's the fire temple in the land of fire, he said. It was quite the journey you two took to get here. It's not often that we let outsiders in, something my protege has been reminding me for nearly a week now. Karin looked over. Huh? A week? Chukaku nodded. It's been over 7 days since you first got here. We cleaned you and began to heal you. You're doing well. Your brother's still fighting though. He's been getting infections all through the week from his wounds. We've been trying to help treat them, but it's going to be some time until he's able to wake up on his own. Karin looked at the bandages and saw that they'd been bleeding. She felt his head and how warm it was. Is he going to be okay? She asked, her voice betraying her emotions as tears welled up behind her eyes. The kindly old monk walked toward her and knelt down beside her before hugging her. He will be okay. We'll make sure of it. For now, focus on healing yourself, child. Get your strength back, he said as he helped her back to her bed. I know you've been sleeping for some time, but you still need more rest to recover completely. Please, take another nap. I'll wake you soon enough for something to eat. I have rice balls steaming. A secret recipe of mine, he said with a smile. The filling consists of a type of sweet and sour sauce that meshes well with everything else. It's quite the favorite treat here, and I thought I could cook some to celebrate your return to health. He tucked Kareen back in. Kareen was astounded by this man. She'd never known someone to act so kindly toward her since her mother and father. Her mind was racing with fears though, wondering what it was this man wanted from her. Was he also going to try and steal her life force through biting? Was there something more nefarious planned? Despite all of this, she was indeed still exhausted. She laid there and felt her eyes growing heavy. She was still too weak to do anything. She assumed that if this man wanted her for something evil, he wouldn't be able to do anything until she was at full health. She laid there and proceeded to fall back asleep. As she did so though, she was assailed by nightmares. She dreamt she was back in Kusa, she and Sasuke both. They stood in a cemetery, looking at the graves of their parents, when suddenly bursting forth from all the graves were the rotten arms and hands of every buried corpse. They latched onto the two of them. Kareen watched as Sasuke was pulled from her arms and dragged into one of the graves, screaming and crying. Kareen herself was pulled down by the very decomposing corpses of her parents. Falling into the hole, she landed in a mausoleum filled with skeletons and what looked like zombies. They held her down and proceeded to bite her, ripping her apart, devouring her limb by limb, with each of the corpses, after having its fill, returning to life as a pale vampire. In the end, all that was left of Kareen was her own consciousness and bones. Unable to move, she woke up in a cold sweat. She sat up with a cry. As she did, she checked herself over for wounds. Finding that there were none, she would see the elderly monk come in with the rice cooker. "Who wants some snacks?" he asked with a cheerful look on his face. Kareen, still skeptical, just sat there. Chukaku would smile and sigh. "I guess I'll just have to eat them all myself." He took one out and bit into it. This sweet and sour sauce is so flavorful, but not overpowering. Perfectly balanced as a complement to the other fillings. It's absolutely delicious." Kareen's mouth was watering. Chukaku opened his eye to peek over at her before taking another bite and continuing. Delicious indeed. But sadly, I don't think I can eat all of these alone. If only I had a friend to help me eat them." Kareen didn't say anything. She was quiet and careful now. The man sighed and stood. "Guess I'll just have to throw the rest away." "Wait," Kareen said as she raised her hand. Chukaku turned around and smiled. "What's that, child? Would you like to help an old man eat all these treats?" Kareen swallowed. Yes. Chukaku carried the rice cooker back over and sat down beside her. He then called for some tea. As they brought the tea set in, Chukaku watched as Kareen began scarfing the food down. Whole rice balls gone in a single swallow. "Calm down, child," Chukaku said with a chuckle. When Kareen seemed to strangle a bit, she beat on her chest a little. Chukaku rubbed her back. He then poured some of the tea provided and handed her a cup, which she downed all at once. She then went back to eating. Chukaku's smile turned to one of pity, realizing that this girl really had been used up. All she could think of at the moment was eating and filling her belly. "Eat, child. Eat as much as you can. I want to see you happy and healthy again. You'll not be able to leave this place and enjoy your life if you're too weak." She looked at him as she swallowed. "Will we really be able to leave this place? Or are we going to be prisoners? Slaves?" Chukaku seemed surprised. "You don't trust people very much, do you?" Looking at her face and her wounds, he let out a sigh. "I suppose you have good reason to be skeptical." "No, child. We won't force you to do anything you don't want to. We're but humble ninja monks. We're philanthropists. I saw you and your brother suffering, and I could not let you perish." He offered another rice ball. "I'm very pleased you enjoy these. This is one of the last things I retain from my childhood. Like you, I was orphaned at a young age and was taken in by the monks here. This is all I have left of my mother, this secret recipe. I've shared it with nobody. They ask, and I never tell. You know why?" "Why?" Kareen asked as she swallowed. The monk smiled. "'Cause it wouldn't be my mother's secret recipe if it wasn't a secret." Kareen offered a smile at the comical response. Chukaku let off a bit of a smile too. "I knew there was still some joy hidden in there." As Kareen continued to eat, Chukaku stroked his beard. "If you like them, I will make some more for you later, if you desire." Kareen nodded. "I would love that. I'm certain Sasu would like some too when he wakes up." The old man looked back. "Sasu? Is that his name?" Kareen nodded. "His name is Sasuke, but I call him Sasu for short." The man smiled. "Adorable. My name is Kareen Uzumaki. The monk looked at her and offered a slight bow, as was the customary formal greeting. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Korean Uzumaki." Korean ate as much as she could handle without making herself sick, and even still, she ate enough to make herself queasy. Laying back, she decided to rest a while longer. The next morning, she woke up and felt good as new. She stood up and began to move. She stretched a bit. Looking at her wrappings, she took them off. The wounds had all mostly healed. There were some scabs left over, but that was mostly it. She stepped outside into the early morning sunlight. It was a beautiful day, not a cloud in sight. The air was warm, but not too steamy. A light breeze pushed through the old temple, bells chiming slightly with the movement of the air. The surrounding area was overgrown with foliage and greenery. Nature was on full display. It was beautiful. She wasn't the only one awake either. Looking down, she saw the monks training their chakra and abilities. Some were training for combat, others were meditating or doing yoga. Some were reading, having tea, or drawing. It seemed peaceful here. Chukaku appeared behind her. "Good morning, Miss Karine. I see you slept well." "I did," she said. "Those rice balls you made me yesterday were delicious, and they helped put me right out." Chukaku offered a smile of contentment. "I'm glad you enjoyed them. I have a few left over for you to eat for breakfast." Karine smiled and followed him in, sitting down at a table to eat the rice balls he'd prepared and to drink the tea. As she finished her meal, Chukaku appeared with a new outfit, one that was like the one the other monks were wearing. "I felt that this would help you blend in more. You won't draw attention to yourself in this." Karine took it and thanked him. She headed to the bathroom, where she proceeded to clean herself up and try on the new outfit. Stepping out, she couldn't help but smile and blush as the old man clapped his hands. "Quite stunning, Miss Karine. The robes look well on you." He led her back to the front. "You're free to roam the grounds as much as you like. Take time to do whatever it is you desire. Meet some new people, hold a conversation or two. Do what makes you happy." Karine thanked him and began to make her way down the steps. From there, she began to look around at the many people. She started exploring the facilities, trying to familiarize herself with the layout. As she walked around, she noticed there was another there, a boy about her age, just sort of sitting there by a koi pond, alone. He looked as if he were meditating, so she tried not to bother him. But as she drew closer, he spoke. "What do you want?" "Oh, I'm sorry," Karine said. "I didn't mean to disturb your meditation." The boy turned around and looked at her, unfamiliar with her voice. Seeing her, he spoke. "Who are you? You're not one of the other monks." Karine then spoke. "My name is Karine. I'm kinda new around here." "Oh, are you one of the foundlings Chukaku brought in?" Karine nodded. "I am." The boy extended his hand out. As he did, though, it startled Karine, who upon first glance noted its demonic shape. She recoiled for a second at the sight of it. The boy pursed his lips and pulled his hand back. "Yeah, not the first time I've seen that reaction." "I'm sorry," Karine said. "I didn't mean to offend. It just caught me off guard. I've never seen something like that before." "It's fine," the boy said. "Even people who know me won't apologize for not wanting to shake it." Karine knelt down beside him. "What's your name?" she asked. "It's Sora," he said. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sora. It truly is," Karine said, trying her best to mend the situation. Sora seemed to loosen up a bit. "Likewise," he responded. Karine couldn't help but sneaking peeks at his arm. "What is it exactly?" "What's what?" he asked. "That," she pointed at his arm. "Why does your hand look like that?" Sora raised his hand and looked at it. "It's been like this for as long as I can remember. I've been told it's a physical manifestation of the demon inside of me." "A demon?" Karine asked with a bit of hesitation. "Yes, a demon. It's said that when I was younger, I was possessed by a dog demon, one that takes the form of a fox. Not too dissimilar from the nine-tailed demon fox that attacked Konoha." "Wow," she said with a bit of fear in her voice. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. "Very," he said. "I'm currently training my meditation to gain control over it. Last time I lost control, I nearly leveled the place. That wasn't my best day, but I helped fix what I damaged. I love this place, and with this power, I'll protect it. That I swear." Karine smiled. "That's an admirable goal. These people seem kind." "They are. When I was orphaned, they took me in." "You were orphaned too?" Karine asked. "Yeah, Please do not disturb my student," a voice came. Karine turned to see a man with a stern face and a bald head. "Master Chukaku may have invited you here to stay and let you run amok, but that doesn't give you the right to intrude on anyone's personal training." "I'm sorry," Karine said. Take a chill pill, Master Chiriku. It's not often that I get to interact with other kids my age," Sora said. "If you want to interact with others your age, Sora, then you can leave the temple. You're here to train, not make friends. Now back to meditation." Sora sighed and went quiet. Karine stood and followed the monk. "Excuse me, Master Chiriku?" "What?" he asked, his words short as if he had no time for her. I just wanted to thank you for accepting me into this temple. I didn't accept you, Chiriku said. You're not a monk, nor are you going to be one. Frankly, you shouldn't even be wearing those robes. The only reason why you're here, and the only reason you have those robes, is because Master Chukaku said you could be here. So don't start getting too comfortable. Once you're better, I'm going to petition the Master to remove you from the premises. We're not a charity organization, nor are we an orphanage. We're a place where serious ninja train seriously to learn serious techniques. Kareen was shocked. Sorry, we didn't wish to cause a fuss. If we have to leave once we're capable, we will. I'm just grateful that you opened your doors to us at all. Your gratitude is not required. If you're truly thankful for our help, then please choose a place that is out of the way and remain there until it's time to leave. Chiriku turned and began to leave, but stopped when a blood-curdling scream could be heard. That came from inside the temple, he said. Both he and Kareen, as well as many other monks, began to flood through the building, running toward where the cries were coming from. Kareen entered the room to see her brother sitting up in bed, pulling his covers up to his face, Chukaku kneeling a ways away in a non-threatening way. Master Chukaku, what is going on here? Chiriku demanded. The little fellow is simply high-strung. Kareen walked over and knelt down. Sasuke looked over at Kareen for a moment in terror until she spoke. Sasu? He looked at her. Kareen. She hugged him tightly. Sasu, she shouted in joy as happy tears began to roll from her cheeks. I was so scared. I thought you wouldn't wake up ever again. She shook with emotion as she hugged him. She was just glad he was okay. Where are we, Kareen? Sasuke asked. We're in the land of fire, in the fire temple. It's a place where ninja monks train to become stronger. She kissed his head. I know you're scared, Sasu, but these people are very kind and generous. They're not going to hurt us. I've been spending time with them. They're not dangerous. Sasuke pointed. That man tried to put a rice ball in my mouth. Kareen looked over at Chukaku. Mom's secret recipe. Kareen giggled and looked at Sasuke. That's Chukaku. He's the head monk here. He's a very kind man, and his rice balls are delicious. Some of the best I've ever had. You love rice balls, don't you? Sasuke nodded. My favorite. Kareen hugged him tighter. Then you'll like these, I promise. Do you trust me? Sasuke nodded. Then don't be scared. These people won't hurt you, I promise. Sasuke nodded. Okay. He hugged her. All the monks in the room let out a collective "ah," except Chiriku, who turned back and began shooing them away. You act like you've never seen kids before. Get back to training. No doubt they'll still be here tomorrow, so get back to work. All the monks left the room. May I come a little closer? Chukaku asked kindly. I would like to give you another rice ball, he said. Sasuke nodded and hugged Kareen tighter. He drew closer to the brother and sister duo. The closer he came, the more Sasuke trembled. As he offered a rice ball, Sasuke hid his face in his sister's arms. Timid little one, isn't he? Chukaku stated. Kareen nodded. He's been through some stuff. He is slow to trust a stranger. An admirable quality in a youngin', though it hurts me to know that this wisdom only came after trials. Kareen took the rice ball and offered it to Sasuke. She turned her back to Chukaku to give Sasuke some privacy. Chukaku smiled and left the steam cooker behind and exited the room, closing the door behind him. Walking off, Chiriku followed him. As they walked out into the sunlight, Chiriku spoke. I expect they will be strong enough to leave in the morning. I think it's best they be off now. Chukaku looked over at Chiriku. I know you're a strong man, Chiriku, but the strongest of men know when to be soft. Strength is meaningless if it is not to protect the weak. Why do you think we train here like this? I understand that, Master, but they're not monks, nor are they planned to become them. Do you remember what happened the last time we let an untrained orphan in here? Chiriku asked. Chukaku smiled. I do. He was a ray of sunshine in my life. He nearly destroyed the whole compound in a fit of rage, Chiriku stated. We don't know where these two came from. We don't know who might be after them and why. It's best we send them away once they're better. Chukaku sighed. I chose you to be my successor, Chiriku, but you have so much yet to learn. Until you learn to harden your muscles while softening your heart, you will not be able to fulfill adequately the role with which I will present. You still need training. I believe looking after these children will help you. Are you saying you plan to renege on your declaration of my successorship? Chiriku asked. Chukaku shook his head. Do not put words in my mouth, my student. I still plan to give you the position when I pass away, but this is the training I have for you. It will give me confidence in your abilities as a master. If you don't do this, when I inevitably pass on, I will do so with a heavy heart, filled with doubts as to the future of the temple. Do you truly want that? Chiriku took a deep breath and sighed. No, master. I do not want to see that. Chukaku smiled. Then I trust you will take adequate care of these young sprouts. Treat them as if they're guests, and learn to recapture that which you lost long ago. Chiriku looked down and sighed. As you wish, master. Chiriku would walk a little deeper into the temple and find an old robe that was the proper size for Sasuke. He then returned to the room where they were to see Sasuke sitting on Karin's lap, eating a rice ball. Karin held his tea close by just in case he began to choke. Sasuke seemed to have calmed to the point that when Chiriku walked into the room, he didn't attempt to hide. Maybe it was the rice ball. He couldn't stop focusing on the rice ball, it was just so good. Chiriku gave Karin the robe. "Be sure to make your brother presentable. I will meet you outside when you're finished." Sasuke and Karin were up and moving. She'd been doting on Sasuke non-stop. She was sure to keep feeding him even when he wasn't hungry. She wanted to make sure that he not only regained all of his strength, but got his weight back up. They had been comatose for quite some time, and during that time, they were beginning to eat away at their own body. Karin could see his ribs, and that disturbed her. Due to this, their stay was extended. Chukaku refused to send them back out into the world if they weren't healthy. In fact, he was just searching for a reason to keep them around. It wasn't often that he got to take care of children, even though his own eyes believed that caring for those who couldn't defend themselves was their job. The Fire Temple should have been a place for all who were downtrodden to seek refuge. That's why he was insinuating that they stay. They couldn't have been that old, nor was he certain they could survive on their own. That's why Chukaku was approaching them now. Sasuke and Karin were sitting out of the way, and once again, she was feeding Sasuke. "You sure you should keep doing that? Little fella looks like he's about to pop." Karin looked over with a smile. "I just want to make sure he has enough meat in his bones to make a hard journey." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Chukaku said. Karin looked over at him. "What do you mean?" "I spoke with my student, Chiriku. He has agreed to allow you to stay here indefinitely." Karin was surprised. "Really? But we can't do that. It would be rude for us to take advantage of your hospitality." "I know, which is why you won't be doing that. If you wish to stay, then you will both need to begin training here, the same that Sora is, and you will dedicate your time here to helping others. How does that sound?" he asked with a smile. Karin looked down, mulling it over. Chukaku cut through the silence with a bit more to say. "You'll have a place to stay, food to eat, clothes to wear. We'll keep you up, and we'll even offer you an education, teach you discipline, and give you skills that you can use to survive on your own. All we ask is that if the need arises that the temple wants to help others like you, and if we need you to do that for us, that you'll do so. That's not too burdensome for you, is it?" Karin shook her head. "It's not too burdensome, but with the passing of our father and now our mother, I'm left as the primary guardian of my little brother. I can't do anything without making sure that it has no negative impacts on him. I hope that doesn't offend you, Mr. Chukaku." The old monk smiled. "No, if anything, it fills me with joy to see a sister so dedicated to her brother. Take all the time you need. See what Sasuke thinks. Take time to pray about it. When you've reached a decision, you know where to find me." Chukaku stood and gave them both a kind head pat. He then began to leave, but before completely leaving, he turned around and spoke. "Also, please let your brother digest before feeding him anymore. We won't make you leave until you're both confident that you can do that and are ready for it." "Thank you, Mr. Chukaku," Sasuke said as he walked away. Karin smiled and sat everything aside. She turned Sasuke around and reclined, letting him recline against her. Thumb going straight in the mouth, Sasuke seemed to try to nap. Karin mulled it all over in her head. Food, shelter, clothing, education, all for free. Basically, it seemed too good to be true. All they really had to do was share responsibilities with the rest of the people. She began to wonder, though, what all would be required of them to do. What would be required of Sasuke? Would this too lead to abuse and misuse of their abilities? Abandonment? After what she had already gone through, both of them, it was hard for them to establish trust with anyone. Surely these people wanted the same thing as the others. Perhaps it was best to just let go. Looking down at Sasuke, though, she wasn't sure if she could take care of him. She wasn't even sure if she could take care of herself. She needed to speak with someone else about this. That night, as Sasuke slept, Karin went outside to think. She looked up into the sky. As she did so, she remembered the nights where her mother would comfort her when she couldn't sleep. It was almost as if she felt the blanket and arm around her shoulder now. "Mom, why did you have to die? Why did you have to leave us? We need you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked down at the ground. The dirt had a soft blue hue to it from the white light of the moon pushing through the atmosphere, tinted blue from the reflection of the water on the planet's surface. Feeling as if an arm were around her, she looked to the side to realize she was indeed alone. As tears ran down her cheeks, she thought back on all the good times. "I could really use you right now, Mom." Letting off a sniffle, she looked at the training grounds at the bottom of the steps. She saw a lantern in the night and a figure carrying it. It was Sora. He was walking across the grounds, carrying a staff. Where is he going, she wondered. She followed him and saw him leaving the compound through a posterior door. She passed through it as well. Behind the temple, there was what looked to be a cemetery. Sora was walking through it. That's creepy as heck, she said as she adjusted her glasses. She followed him down into the cemetery, looking at all the headstones, each of which bore a name she did not recognize. Sora had passed them all by. He stopped at a statue that had 4 sides, and on each side was a name, and below each of the 4 sides was a grave. Sitting down his lantern and his staff, he sat there and stared at it. Kareen was confused. She tried to get closer to see what he was doing, but being as lacking in stealth as possible, she stepped on a stick. It cracked, alerting Sora, who stood, grabbed his staff, and pointed it in her direction. "Who's there?" Kareen attempted to hide, but Sora spoke again. "I know you're there. You can't hide from me. Come out." Kareen would think it over before slowly peeking out. Sora pointed his staff at her. "Come out from there." Slowly, Kareen came out from behind the tombstone. What are you doing here?" Sora asked. "I saw you cross the yard, and I was wondering what you were up to, So you decided to spy on me?" Sora asked. Kareen nodded. "I know, it's rude, but I just wanted to know." "Even if it's not any of your business? Is it your culture where you come from to stick your nose in affairs that do not concern you?" Sora asked. "Screw my culture. My culture betrayed me. Or maybe it never cared for me in the first place. Sounds like a familiar story. Everyone here's been through that to some degree." Sora slowly raised his staff to the air, returning it to a neutral position. "I wanted to know what you were doing. I wanted to know more about this place. I want to know more about these people." "Why? Are you infatuated with our lifestyle? Want to live like a monk all the time? Hyper-fixating on something you'll get over in a moment?" Kareen shook her head. "I want to make sure it's not dangerous." "Dangerous?" Sora asked with shock, confusion, and slight offense. "I want to make sure the monks here aren't lying. I want to make sure that I won't get used. I want to make sure that Sasuke won't get used." "That's an affront to our honor," Sora said as he pointed the staff back at her. "What gives you the right to come into our compound, eat our food, drink our water, wear our clothes, and wander our grounds only to accuse us of malevolence?" he shouted, face growing redder. He stepped in closer to her. "I'm reporting you to Chiriku. I'm tired of being pestered." He grabbed at her arm to take her, but she pulled away. It looked like he wanted to attack her. "You don't want this, girl. Come with me quietly or I'll force you to." He gripped at her arm again, causing her to resist, but he was stronger than she was. She attempted to strike him, but he caught her arm. As he did, her sleeve fell back. Sora glimpsed the arm for a moment before his gaze returned to it. There were scars covering it. Teeth, not in the shape of a dog or wild animal, but of humans. He looked back at her. "What is that scar?" She pulled her hands out of his grip. "As if you deserve to know." Sora sat back before the statue with a sigh. "You're the one following me around, wanting to know what I'm doing. If you don't tell me what your deal is, I won't tell you mine." Kareen slowly began to sit down. This is the scar that was given to me by my people. The ones who told me they would take care of me. It's not the only one either. My entire body is covered in similar ones. My little brother too." "Why?" Sora asked. "We're Uzumaki. We have a strong life force. When our village came under attack, we were called up as healers. The people would bite us, drain us of our chakra to regenerate. It's how our mother died. When she fell, they turned to us and made us do the same. It was everything I could do just to stay alive, and even then, what little I had, I gave to make my little brother strong enough to survive. I've had experience with people who said they would give us a place to stay if we helped them in return. Because of that, I lost my parents and nearly died. I'm here now because of a situation like that. And you all expect me to commit to this without even thinking about it, without questioning it? That's cruel." Sora took another sigh. "My father was an elite shinobi, a personal protector of the fire daimyo. During the course of the Ninetails' assault on the village hidden in the leaves, he perished, and a part of the Ninetails was sealed into me." He displayed his hand. "Our scars are shaped differently, but they're still the same." Kareen looked down. "I don't mean to impugn upon the honor of you and your people. I just can't bring yourself to trust anyone?" Sora asked, finishing her sentence. "I suppose I can understand that." Taking a moment to bring himself to let go of his pride, he spoke. "I'm sorry for getting upset at you." Kareen pushed her hair back as she too attempted to let go of pride, bitterness, and wrath. "It's okay, I guess." As they sat there, she looked up at the statue. "So what is this place? Why are you here?" Sora looked up at the statue. "There's a group of Konoha shinobi in the Land of Fire known as the 12 Guardian Ninja, or There used to be. They were the personal guards of the fire daimyo. After a schism broke out in which some of the shinobi attempted to overthrow the daimyo and the land of fire, they were disbanded. But of the 6 that stayed loyal, 4 have since perished. This is their grave. And you protect their graves as a show of respect? Kareen asked. Sora shrugged. I've never questioned why I was supposed to do it, but the graves must always be watched. I suppose it could be because of that. Or maybe it's because my father was one of the 12 that I've been chosen for this. Regardless, I'm here, guarding it. How long have you lived in this compound? She asked. Sora thought about it. Nearly as long as I can remember. I can't remember a time when I didn't live here. In that time, how have the monks acted? Do you mean to ask if they've ever abused me? Sora asked with apprehension. His pride didn't like to dwell on such questions to the honor of the people who raised him. No, they haven't, even though they've had every right to. How so? Kareen asked. Sora rolled his eyes. He didn't want to talk about it, but felt he needed to. A few years ago, he looked at his arm. Dark spirit began to stir. I was so young, wasn't mentally prepared to handle it. I lost control and ended up devastating much of the temple due to the power of the demon fox. And despite the fact that I could logically have been killed, they simply forgave me and began to rebuild the temple. Oftentimes, I am a bit of an outcast, but that being said, I deserve far worse than they've given me. They certainly haven't been biting me, at least. The most they've done is assign me to this somewhat boring job. But even then, I can't be certain this is out of spite. After all, I am the one with a connection to the 12 Guardian Ninja. Kareen sat there and thought deeply about it. Sora, feeling moved in his heart, spoke. Listen, I understand your apprehension, but I've been here all my life, have done far worse than you, and have a power that a lot of people seek. Despite all of that, they've treated me fairly. I know you're probably having a hard time trusting anyone right now, but I'm being 100% honest with you. These people are not bad people and will take care of you and treat you like family. From one orphan to another, I can promise that. Kareen nodded. It's a good opportunity. I'm just gonna have to trust strangers without knowing the outcome. Sora shrugged. Then leave. Kareen was confused. Sora spoke. Don't think too hard about it. The doors are always open. You can leave whenever you want, and so can I. Stay here and do what you need to, and if you feel that it's not for you, then go. Nothing's stopping you. You're free to do whatever you want. We're just treating you kindly. You don't have to trust that, but honestly, you'd be an idiot not to take advantage. Ask yourself, is staying here a while with people you don't know who will take care of you worse than going out into the world unable to survive on your own? Kareen thought about it. He wasn't wrong. Looking up at the moon, she wondered what her mother and father would say. Looking down, she let out a sigh with a slight nod, showing she was mulling it over. Thank you for talking with me, Sora, she said as she rose to her feet. Sora waved it off. Most interesting night of guard duty I've had since ever. Kareen then began to walk off toward the compound. Sneaking into the temple, she made her way back up the stairs and entered the building. She walked into the room that had been given to her and Sasuke to find Sasuke already sleeping soundly. She lay down next to him and wrapped her arms around him to keep him warm. She thought deeply on this as she proceeded to fall asleep. The next morning, she woke early. Sasuke was still sleeping quietly. Getting up, she walked outside to find Chukaku smoking a pipe and watching the others train. Good morning, Kareen. I hope you slept well. I did, she said as she watched the training happening below. I was thinking about what you said, she told him. And what conclusion did you reach? If you reached one, of course. I reached one, she said. He looked over and smiled. I'm eager to know what you've decided. Kareen smiled awkwardly. I've decided to take you up on your offer. We'll do our best to help out if you offer the things you said. Chukaku smiled and rested his hand on her shoulder. We'll do all of that and more, child. All you need to do is let us. He waved to Chiriku from the distance. The shaven-headed man approached them. Yes, Master Chukaku. Chukaku turned Kareen around slowly, guiding her to face her new master. Kareen and Sasuke have decided to enroll in our programs. I'm placing them under your care. Treat them as you know I would. Chiriku seemed like he wished to protest, but after a slight sigh to let go of his futile arguments, he agreed. Yes, Master. I'll put them in the same program Sora's in. When can we begin? Kareen asked. Right now, he said. Go wake your brother. My teaching is not for the faint of heart. It requires dedication, and it won't be easy. Kareen was shocked for a moment that they'd be going full throttle from the very beginning. She quickly flushed her mind of all doubts and hesitations before offering a slight bow. Yes, Master. She then ran into the temple to their room where she would try to wake Sasuke. Chukaku watched her run off with a chuckle. Try to take it easy on them a little. They're very new to everything. I don't even think they have proper chakra training, let alone anything close to the level of mastery required to utilize our gift. There's no day like the present to learn, he said. Kareen stumbled out of the temple with Sasuke holding her hand. He yawned and rubbed his eyes as he followed her out. What's going on? He asked. Master Chiriku has offered to train us so we can stay here and learn about how to survive. So you need to be up so we can begin. You need to be awake so we can begin. Chiriku began to walk down the stairs slowly. Follow me, children. Karin led Sasuke down. As they got to the bottom, he led them toward the koi pond. Sasuke was quick to run over to it to look in at the koi. Chiriku raised him up by his collar. Don't lose focus. We're not here to look at the fish. We're here to learn. He put Sasuke back with Karin. The first thing we're going to learn is how to control your chakra. And before you ask, no, you're never too young to learn. Chakra control is the foundation of what it takes to master the techniques we teach here, and anything else I deem necessary for you to learn. And you will maintain a level of focus and discipline through it all. Am I clear? Karin nodded. Sasuke looked away and poked at his own index fingers. Chiriku looked to Sasuke and sighed at the troubled boy. He knelt down in front of him. I know you want to look at the koi, but the koi will be there later. No task can be completed without discipline. If you can't focus your mind even a little, you'll never get anywhere. You must learn when to say no to something, and you will need the willpower to enforce that decision. If you do well today, I will personally bring you back here later to help me feed the koi. Does that sound fair? Sasuke began to smile. A bit of a smile crept onto Chiriku's face before he banished it again for that same stoicism he had displayed since they arrived. He stood. Now, let's begin. The basics of chakra control are simple. All humans have the ability to control chakra in some capacity. Rarely is this impossible, and just as rarely they can control it across their entire body. But in the most common cases, the hands and feet are where the chakra is controlled the easiest. This is why we can stick to walls, and why we require hand seals to perform ninjutsu. Our hands generate the chakra, and through the movement of our hands, we knead the chakra into a shape and style we require. The types of jutsu we can produce is dependent upon our chakra nature. Each of us possess a chakra nature we excel in. That is what we are proficient at. There are ways to tell what you are proficient in. If you're not capable of utilizing a certain chakra nature, you will not be able to utilize ninjutsu that require that chakra. If you are not capable of utilizing a certain chakra nature, you will not be able to utilize ninjutsu that requires that chakra nature. Further, natures can be mixed into various other natures, though many of those techniques require a Kekai Genkai, which is a technique or ability that is connected to your bloodline. But then, there are chakra types that anyone can learn with enough training, and that chakra type is what I wish to teach you. It's the gift of the hermit group. Now, let us begin. Follow my movements and listen to my instructions, and you should grasp the concept quickly. Through practice, you will hone your skills, and eventually even the toughest of ninjutsu will be but child's play. Now, follow me. Chiriku would begin to show them how to control their chakra. They both attempted to do this as Sora watched. He proceeded to hone his skill in an attempt to further refine the gift of the hermits. While he could produce this chakra, he couldn't do much with it. The training went on for the rest of the day, and they worked on their mental studies. Just as Chiriku promised, at the end of the day, he allowed Sasuke to help him feed the koi. But as he did so, the drowsy child, unable to keep his eyes open, fell asleep in front of the pond. Chiriku couldn't blame him. He was young, and the demands that he had forced upon him were taxing. Not only did he require him to train his mind, but his body as well. Chakra was a spiritual energy, but it was inexorably linked to the physical state. Through the mixing of physical and spiritual energies, chakra grew and propagated ninjutsu. He had trained them all physically. Of course, as small as Sasuke was, he couldn't keep up with everything Chiriku demanded, and that was okay. But his dedication was driven by his desire to see the koi, and that pushed Sasuke past what most kids his age were capable of. Chiriku sensed within Sasuke a potential that seemed to surpass even Sora. Due to that, he respected Sasuke's discipline. He would lift the boy up and carry him to his room for rest. "Sleep well, students," he said as he closed the door, "because tomorrow we're going to do this all over again." And so they did, not just on one day, but the day after that, and on for a year at least. Sasuke was 6 and Karin was now 10, and the both of them had grown stronger and more agile. Through the forests Chiriku ran, giving them the task of catching up to him. As he jumped and bounded, Karin and Sasuke, like bolts of lightning, were close behind him. All the while, Chukaku watched from a distance. Their progress was incredible. In but 1 year, they had already reached what most villages put as genin level. In the land of Konoha, this mostly required children to study for years, from young ages to around the age of 12. And now Sasuke and Karin were at that level, having crossed the threshold in a short time. Chiriku's ability to teach was evident in these two. He had a gift for sculpting true warriors out of anything. This was his strong point, teaching discipline, but for every strength he had, a weakness existed as well. Chiriku still had a long way to go, but he could see the growth in him. As Karin fell from a tree to the ground, having misjudged a branch, Chukaku stumbled forward as if he wanted to go help her. He would have too until he saw Chiriku turn back and approach her to check her wounds. He would personally lift her and return her to the temple. Chukaku would turn around and enter the building himself. There he would see that she'd scraped her knee, which Chiriku was currently cleaning and properly bandaging. Sasuke stood nearby and watched. Chukaku would place his hand on his shoulder. "Your sister is very tough, young man. She can handle even a raspberry like this one. Don't worry about her. Everyone falls every once in a while. What's important is getting back up." Sasuke nodded. Finishing up, Chiriku looked at her knee and spoke. "I think that's enough learning for one day. Learning when to rest is as important as learning when to work." He stood and began to turn around and walk away. As he did, Chukaku walked over to her and held out his hand to help her up. "You've been doing very well, child. I've been watching. I've seen you grow. I see the dedication in your eyes. Sasuke motivates himself to keep the koi fish healthy, and you motivate yourself to keep Sasuke healthy. That dedication is something worthy of honor. Go rest. I think tonight is a night to make some rice balls. How does that sound?" Sasuke was already drooling. "It sounds good," he shouted from behind. Chukaku laughed. "Then go get ready, child. It's a feast tonight." Sasuke ran off with a yippee to clean up for supper. Karine smiled as he did so. Chukaku smiled at her and then turned to walk away. As he did, he found himself outside with Chukaku. "I've seen your growth as well, Chiriku." The monk looked over. "I'm simply training them the way I've always trained others." Chukaku nodded. "A teacher you are. That's what you've always been. But who is a teacher without his pupils? The relationship a teacher and student possesses is special. You become like a father to them. They trust you to help them figure it out. Why do you think I sent you the orphans?" Chiriku looked down as he leaned over the rails. Chukaku spoke again. "You're afraid of your heart. You're afraid that it will make it hard for you to be a teacher, but I need you to let go of your fears. Your heart is what will make you a better teacher. What you displayed today was heart. It was logic. She cannot stand, therefore she cannot work. It's important to know the difference." Chukaku shook his head. "No, you simply did not wish to cause her undue pain. Compassion. That's why we have hearts in the first place. Love is a force without equal among our emotions. It trumps all emotions and works even when our hearts are broken. We just have to let it. Open your heart, Chiriku. You've trained one child, and now you train two more. And rest assured you will one day train all who come to this place. But you first must prepare your heart." Chiriku looked at his master. "I remember the last time I opened my heart." Chukaku nodded. "It was tragic, but you can't let that stop you. Just because someone took advantage of you doesn't mean everyone will. Some hearts are pure, some are broken, others are muddy and weak. But that doesn't give us an excuse to stop opening our hearts to them. I would even go so far as to say to keep your heart open to those who have wronged you too. In fact, it might be them who need it most." Chiriku looked over. "You don't know what they did to me," he said. "You can't just tell me to forgive them." Chukaku nodded. "You're right. I can't tell you to do that. Only you can tell yourself to forgive them." Chukaku turned and began to walk away. As the night wore on, everyone was getting snug into bed, a large feast of Chukaku's famous rice balls filling their bellies. Chukaku was still up. It was a late night for him, as were most nights. Was it out of necessity? Was he up for some reason? No, he just didn't like to sleep early. The night was one of his favorite parts of the day, and how could he enjoy looking at the stars while sleeping? Sitting there on a rocking chair out front of the temple under the awning, he was reading by candlelight, a warm pot of tea beside him, letting off steam into the night. As he looked over his books, he sipped his tea. In the distance, a thunderhead threatened the starry night he was enjoying, but even in that, there was beauty. The destructive nature of, well, nature was itself beautiful, and the distant claps of thunder and flashes of lightning brought him happiness. But as the rolling roars of plasma forcing air to expand beyond the sound barrier echoed through the sky, another sound could be heard tailing behind it. Chukaku's eyes looked left for a moment as he thought he heard something. Returning to his book, he ignored it until he heard it again. It sounded like the voice of a person, a shouting voice. Chukaku stood and looked around the side of the temple to see Sora running to the compound. Chukaku began to run toward him. As he did, he caught the boy bloodied, battered, and bruised. "Sora, what happened to you?" Chukaku asked. "4 men. They approached the cemetery. I told them to leave, and they..." He fell to his knees. Chukaku laid Sora back. "It's okay, Sora. I'll go." He then called out, "Someone, help! Sora needs help!" He then stood and ran toward the cemetery. Other monks rushed out, Chiriku, Sasuke, and Karine included. As Chukaku ran down the hill, he entered the cemetery to see 4 individuals wearing cloaks and wide-brimmed hats to hide their identity. Chukaku stood there. "Who are you, and what business do you have here?" Chiriku went to Sora's side. "Sora, are you okay?" he asked as the other monks began to surround him. "Master Chukaku, he's confronting them alone. You have to help." Chiriku stood and began to run toward the cemetery. "Master, wait!" Karine shouted. Sasuke behind her. Chiriku looked back. "Go back to the temple." He then continued on. As he ran down to the cemetery, he saw Chukaku. "Master!" he shouted. Chukaku was bleeding, heavily wounded. Before him stood 4 cloaked figures, by their side 4 caskets. Chiriku immediately knew what was happening. "You!" Suddenly the voices of Karin and Sasuke could be heard. "Master, let us help!" The 4 cloaked figures saw them coming. One of them signaled another. They began to weave hand signs to prepare a ninjutsu. They released a fire-style ninjutsu, but as they released it, Chukaku stepped in the way and dispersed it. "I will not let you harm my students," he said. Suddenly he raised one hand to his chest and pushed the other down. A golden avatar enveloped him. "Welcoming approach, 1,000-armed murder." Suddenly the avatar turned red as its face grew grotesque and filled with rage. 1,000 arms shot out toward the quartet. They were pushed back, being put on the defensive. They seemed like they might respond to the attack with one of their own. That was until he raised his hand to stop them. They already had what they came for. He pointed off toward the distance. They rushed off, the 4 caskets beside them. Chiriku ran forward. "Come back here, you traitors," he shouted. "Damn it, they got away with the bodies. Do you know what they could do with those?" He looked back for a moment, and it was as if time stopped. The body of Chukaku began to fall over. Karin and Sasuke ran over to him. "Master!" Chiriku rushed to him. "Master!" He held him up in his arms. Chukaku gave off a slight wheeze as he looked up. "Chiriku, don't be filled with hatred. Forgive them," he said. Chiriku grit his teeth as tears, something that hadn't fallen from his eyes in years, drew forth in droves. "How can you ask me to do that? How can I forgive them?" Chiriku looked at him with a slight glaze in his eyes. "Because I do." Sasuke came to him. "Master, are you okay?" he asked. "You're not going to go away too, are you?" Chiriku looked at Sasuke with a smile. "Child, I'll never go away from you. I will always be." He tapped his chest, where his heart was. "I'll be right here, beside your mother and father." Sasuke hugged onto Chukaku as the elderly man passed away. The service was short. He too was buried in the cemetery. There, Sasuke sat by the grave, Karin nearby watching. Sora was also close by. Chiriku would walk over to the grave. Sasuke would look up at the man, eyes and nose running something fierce. Chiriku would kneel down and hug Sasuke close. As he did so, he pulled back. He offered something. It was a letter. Sasuke looked at it. "I found this in Chukaku's room. It was addressed to you and your sister." Sasuke offered it back. "Read it to me." Chiriku nodded. He opened the letter. "To my dearest students, Karin and Sasuke. I always find it odd writing these, as one doesn't like to plan for their own demise, but alas, here I am. You and your sister have long since become something special to me. You're 2 very special kids, and my love for you has only grown as time passes. I'm glad to have you in my life, and so I know it must be bitter for you that I'm no longer by your side, but I still linger within your heart. Don't be sad for me, for I've moved on to a better place, but know the pain will remain. This is why I give to you the thing I treasure most from my mother. I give you the recipe to my rice balls. It would be such a tragedy if the world were deprived of these wonderful snacks. Every time you eat one, please think of me, and know that when I eat them in heaven, I will be thinking of you. With love, Chukaku." Chiriku would then close up the paper and offer it to the boy, who was then doing everything he could not to cry. Sasuke took it into his arms in a hug before letting out a roar of pure and utter pain. His posture collapsing, he fell forward into Chiriku's arms. "I don't want to feel it anymore," he shouted. "I'm tired of feeling it. All the death. Mom, Dad, and now Mr. Chukaku. When does it end?" Chiriku felt the last of the ice on his heart he held in reserve finally break. "It's going to be okay, Sasuke. I will protect you." The temple grounds were covered in at least an inch of water. "Drainage system needs to be unclogged," Karin said as she watched. The rain had not let up. It was as if the heavens were crying over the death of Chukaku. It had been around 40 hours since Chukaku had perished, and the temple did not have time to mourn. There was something rather important going on. Those bodies were very important, and Karin didn't know why, but whatever it was, the retrieval of those bodies was paramount, and any emotion that would have been spent reflecting on the life, legacy, and whole Chukaku left behind was now being funneled into rage and the need to find the enemy. Karin was learning this now. Their tears were channeled into scowls. Those scowls had not slept since the event and would not rest until it was over. Even now, they stood in the rain, pointing about. What were they pointing at? What was being ordered to be done? Karin couldn't hear it over the slaps of the water pellets striking the standing water, but whatever the orders were, they must have been important. All day, monks were seen leaving the temple. Scariest of all, they were carrying weapons. The monks here were generally pacifists, but suddenly they had forgotten this and were now taking up arms to kill. As she reflected on this, her mind's eye of the Kagura detected something approaching her from behind. It was a familiar energy, normally a bouncing ball of warm golden light, now a downtrodden shape of blue, barely dragging itself. She turned around to see Sasuke standing there. "Hey, champ, what's up?" Karin asked. Sasuke seemed sad. He had only now just woken up. He hadn't slept well, which was obvious. He'd been crying all night, so she let him sleep in a little to catch up on what he lost. She guided him around and then let him sit in her lap. The two of them watched the monks. Nothing was really said. What could Karin say anyway? That everything would be okay? It was true that it would, but all the same, Sasuke wouldn't understand, nor would he even care if he did. The only thing she could try to do was take his mind off of it. A nefarious grin crept across her face as she raised her hand up. She licked her finger before inserting it into his ear. "Ha ha," she laughed. "Wet willy." Sasuke had no reaction, no laugh, no disgust. It was as if he didn't care in the slightest. Karin's shoulders drooped as she wiped her finger and his ear for him. She hugged him a little tighter, placing her chin in his hand. "It's okay, kiddo, you still got me." "For how long?" he questioned, catching her off guard. "For how long? Well, forever." Suddenly they were interrupted by Sora. "Guys, Chiriku needs us in his office." Karin nodded. "Tell him we'll be there in a moment." She then turned her attention to Sasuke. "Sasu, look at me." He didn't move. She lifted him up off her lap and turned him around. "Sasu." He looked up at her. "I'm not going anywhere, okay?" He just stared at her for a moment. "Okay," she prodded again. His cheek twitched and he grunted, the most half-hearted agreement in existence. She hugged him. She then got up and led him to the office. Entering in, they saw Chiriku getting things together. This had at one time been Chukaku's office before he passed on. Chiriku looked back. "Ah, Karin, Sasuke, Sora, I'm glad you guys are here." "What's going on?" Karin asked. "The monks are all preparing to search for the enemy." "And us?" she asked. Chiriku then spoke. "You'll be coming with me. I can't leave you here alone. The other monks are all leaving to look for the enemy, and I will be leaving with Sora, but I can't leave you and Sasuke." "Who even are these guys anyway?" Sora asked. "They're former members of the 12 Guardian Ninja of the Daimyo, 12 ninjas specifically picked out for being elite shinobi. At some point, there was a schism between the 12 and they split in half, 6 going one way and 6 going the other. During the course of the events, 2 of the enemy shinobi were killed, leaving 4, and on the good side, 4 of them perished. Those 4 were the bodies you were protecting." Sora seemed to understand. "But what difference does it make? They're dead bodies. What good can they do?" "They may be bodies," Chiriku said, "but that doesn't mean that they're not dangerous. There are many techniques that shinobi can use, and if at any time one can manage to find a way to revive the dead, even as an empty shell, which of course is possible according to historical documents, that would mean that the technique of these 4 shinobi is available to them, and the power of these 4 shinobi is enough to change the world forever. Just one blast from their combined technique can wipe a village off the face of the planet forever." "That's insane," Sora said. "If that's what it was, why didn't we incinerate their bodies so nobody could use them again?" Chukaku looked away shamefully. That's when Sora understood. "You kept them around because you planned to use them again." Karin was shocked. "Master?" Chukaku sat down as he rubbed his face. He began to explain. "I was a member of the 12 Guardian Ninja back in the day, and I was a member of the group that stayed loyal. The enemy group believed that there should be no other heads of state besides the daimyo. That being said, the Hokage, the Kazekage, the Tsuchikage, Raikage, and Mizukage were all targets of this group. They believed that the splitting of power between 2 different military forces within the same country was a brewing pot for civil war. They believed that hidden villages should be under the direct command of the daimyo at all times, and that they should unquestionably follow his or her orders. To that end, they tried to take these 4 shinobi by force to use against the villages, but before they could go against the villages, they were driven off and the 4 shinobi sacrificed their lives to keep this power out of the fallen guardians' hands. Despite that, when we were considering cremating them, the daimyo stopped us. Though the fallen guardians were traitors for disobeying direct command and acting against the daimyo's wishes, what the guardians had said struck the daimyo. He began to fear the concept of Konoha. What if they turned against him? Konoha had a tailed beast, and that alone could level the land of fire. He had come to realize that the Hokage was perhaps the most powerful man in the world, even more so than the daimyo. He needed a contingency plan should a civil war ever break out, an ace in the hole as it were, and that would be the 4 Guardian Ninja. The daimyo, needing a deterrent, left their bodies uncremated just in case. I, being the last Guardian Ninja still in the service of the daimyo, was given control of the bodies and told to guard them with my life. "Wait, just you? I thought you said there was another," Karin said. Chiriku nodded. There was, but he left the daimyo's command ages ago. He currently resides in Konoha as a master to the next generation of Leaf Nin. That being said, a Konoha shinobi cannot be entrusted with the contingency plans to destroy his own village in case of an uprising. That's why I was chosen as the one to guard the bodies. I see, Sora said. It made enough sense to him that he no longer remained angry. If anything, he came to realize that the fallen guardians weren't entirely wrong for their point of view, if even the daimyo realized the necessity of a deterrent. But he did disagree with their decision to act upon it without orders, something that he agreed with Chiriku about. That being said, the next question was a simple one. Where are we going? I need to contact my old friend in Konoha. We can't be certain about where the Fallen Four are going, but if I were to guess, I would say Konoha would be a good first lead. That's why I need you to gather your things. We're heading out as soon as possible. Sora nodded and began to leave. Karin and Sasuke would also head to their room and proceed to gather the items they thought they would need. An extra change of clothes and some food and water. Once all of that was gathered, they'd proceed to leave with Chiriku together. They walked under the umbrella until eventually the clouds parted and the sun began to shine. It was as if Chukaku were offering them a parting wish of good fortune for their mission. They would stop to eat and sleep every so often, but eventually they made it to the gate of Konoha. Big gates, Karin said. Thought they'd be more impressive though. And what's with the welcoming graffiti, she asked. That was until the gate opened up to them, displaying the vastness of the village, all set before the background of a steep rock face in which the faces of many formidable shinobi, previous Hokage, were born. Whoa, Karin said in shock as she witnessed the greatness of the village. There's no wonder that daimyo fears this place. If they can make their village look like this and prosper, then surely they must be powerful. This looks almost like a second capital for the country, she said. I remember my first time here, Chiriku said. My thoughts were the same as yours. I still find myself awe-inspired by its beauty. It's even more beautiful at night. Chiriku looked back. Sora, I want you to find us a place to stay. Me and the others will head to the Hokage's office to speak to my former comrade and see if we can link up resources to find the threat. Sora nodded and headed off to find a good place to stay. From there, they'd begin to move through the village. Sasuke's eyes were wide, seeing how big it was. This place was nothing like Kusagakure. It was a real shinobi village. It was one of the 5 great villages. It dwarfed Kusa by comparison. So many places to eat, so many shops to visit. It was a tourist's paradise. It was a beacon of peace in a world overshadowed by war. As they moved closer to the Hokage's monument, they also drew closer to their destination. Seeing the building where the Hokage tended to gather, Chiriku walked into the front desk and asked if the Hokage were free, and if not, when he could make an appointment for. Just before the receptionist was to give him an answer, the door behind him opened. Chiriku! A voice called out. The monk turned around to see a man with jet black hair, slightly spiked, and a chin-strap beard that almost looked like it was trying to keep his fantastic hair attached to his head. Asuma! Chiriku called back. The two buddies giggled and hugged each other. Asuma then spoke. Chiriku, I thought that was you. I'd spot that shiny head of yours anywhere. Chiriku laughed. As soon as I smelled the cigarettes and heard the smoker's hack, I knew it was you. They pulled away from their embrace, Asuma taking his old brother in arms by the ear in a loving way. What brings you here, Chiru? I hope all is well. Chiriku took a breath and sighed through his distress, his smile dulling as he recalled the trouble. Something is wrong, I take it, Asuma said with a certain gravity as he understood Chiriku's reaction. Come, I'll take you in to see my father. He'll help. Asuma bypassed the protesting receptionist and led the group into Hiruzen's office. Father, I'm sure you remember my old friend, Chiriku. Hiruzen looked up from his papers, removing the pipe from his mouth as he smiled, his nose billowing out smoke like 2 ancient volcanic vents. Of course. Hiruzen stood and offered the 2 seats in front of the desk for the group to sit. Karin and Sasuke both sat in one chair as the other was filled by Chiriku, who, despite wishing to remain humble, couldn't help but get off his feet. So, what brings you here? Hiruzen asked. I was here to ask for aid. Aid in what? Hiruzen questioned. Aid in our search for the 4 fallen guardian ninja. The air in the room seemed to grow tenser as Chiriku continued. The 4 attacked the temple a few nights before last, and during that time they took the bodies of the 4 shinobi who were capable of that technique. I'm afraid of what they plan to do with them. Hiruzen nodded. Limelight, the technique that shines down light from the heavens to the destruction of the Land of Fire's enemies. Asuma groans. Yeah, I was afraid of that, Asuma said. What do you have need of? Hiruzen asked. We need people to help us search for them. Considering their past, it only makes sense that they're planning on taking out one of the great ninja villages. But of all logical places I could assume they would attack, I believe it would be Konoha, since it's the greatest of all 5 villages, and the one that exists within the Land of Fire they so fervently love. Hiruzen nodded. We will offer our help in any way we can. Chiriku nodded. Thank you. Chiriku then pulled something from his robe and handed it to Asuma. What's this? Asuma asked as he looked it over. It's a letter addressed to you from Chukaku. His last words he wished to deliver to you. Last words, Asuma said. Damn, so the old man did pass on. Chiriku nodded. Yes, I'm sorry. Asuma tucked the letter inside of his flak jacket. It's okay, I'm sure you did everything you could do. As the adults were talking, Karin and Sasuke waited silently. It was at that moment that a young man rushed into the room holding a kunai, running at Hiruzen before falling on his face. Konohamaru, Asuma shouted as Hiruzen smiled and shook his head. An older boy with gold and yellow hair, no older than Sora, stepped in and grabbed Konohamaru by the ankle. I'm sorry, Lord Third, he just got away from me. It's fine, Naruto. I'm sure you're doing your best. Konohamaru's just a little firebrand. Naruto began pulling Konohamaru back out the door. This turn of events caught Sasuke's attention. Karin noticed this, as did Hiruzen. Please forgive my grandsons. They mean no harm. They're just very playful and rambunctious. Hiruzen sat for a moment. I have an idea. Why don't you kids go off and play with my grandchildren while the adults do all the boring talking? Karin looked down. You want to go play, Sasu? Sasuke nodded slowly as he kept his eyes fixated on the now closed door. Karin helped them get up, and the two of them followed after. Opening the door, they found a long corridor that seemed mostly empty except for one Anbu member that seemed to be walking and carrying a document labeled confidential. Sasuke couldn't help but look at the man's strange fox-shaped mask. The man looked down at Sasuke as well. Karin then pulled Sasuke away. Sorry, we're just looking for the Hokage's grandchildren. The Anbu looked around and then pointed to a door. Karin smiled. Thank you. The Anbu offered a thumbs up before continuing on his way. Karin and Sasuke entered the room to see that the yellow-haired boy had tied his young charge to a chair. What have I said about trying to kill Grandpa? I will become Hokage one day, no matter the cost, the boy shouted as he rocked on the chair, causing it to fall over. Sasuke watched, his hand holding closely to Karin's. Naruto looked up at them and walked forward. He offered a slight bow. Hey, please forgive my kid brother. He's not yet able to control his own actions. I'm Naruto. Hi, Naruto, Karin said. My name's Karin, and this is my own kid brother, Sasuke. Naruto knelt down and smiled, patting the boy on the head. Sasuke, I like that name. Seems familiar to me somehow. Karin looked over. And that's your brother, Konohamaru? If you don't mind me saying, you two don't look very similar. That's because I'm adopted, Naruto said. My actual name is Naruto Uzumaki, but I've taken on the name Sarutobi because Mr. Hiruzen's taken it upon himself to raise me. Wait, you're an Uzumaki too, Karin said? Naruto is shocked. Wait, you guys are Uzumaki? Sora found a nice place to stay, a hotel that mixed quality with affordability. Stockpot Inn, he said as he looked back at the hotel while holding the keys to their room number. He began to make his way toward the Hokage's monument. That was until a hand reached out from the darkness and grabbed Sora, pulling him into an alleyway. Sora struggled and prepared to fight, but was effortlessly subdued by a man with white hair. Who are you? He demanded. Call me Furido. Sora looked at him closer. You're one of the four who stole the bodies. Sora fought against him. I'll kill you. Furido struggled to hold Sora. Be calm. I'm not here to hurt you. You killed Chukaku. Furido covered the boy's mouth. The old man died on his own. He overused his own chakra. Furido let go of Sora's mouth for a moment. I don't want to hurt you, Sora, he said. Liar, you nearly beat me to death that night. Don't be overdramatic. You managed to walk all the way back to the temple by yourself. You were fine. Sora then spoke. Where are the bodies? They're with us. Give them back, he demanded. Furido shook his head. If you understood what was happening at all, you'd agree with us. Understood what? Sora asked. Furido continued. If you could understand what your father stood for, things would be different. You wouldn't be on their side. My father? How do you know my father? Sora asked. Because he was one of the 12 Guardian Ninja who sided with us. He's the reason why you're a partial Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails. Sora shook his head. That's not true. It is. I was there when the Nine-Tails' energy was sealed inside of you. You were but a baby, and the Nine-Tails escaped its Jinchuriki, the fourth Hokage's wife. I witnessed the devastation caused by the beast. The whole world did. That's why your father tried to seal it away inside of you, and why we later tried to destroy Konoha. There comes a point where having two governments in your nation becomes too dangerous, especially if the smaller government possesses more firepower. What happened in the Leaf that night is what could have happened anywhere. Your father tried to hijack the Nine-Tails and seal it away in you so the village wouldn't have the ability to retaliate against the Land of Fire, no matter what decisions we made. We never betrayed the daimyo. Chiriku did. Sora shook his head. I refuse to believe that. Furido looked down and shook his head. You know the man Chiriku is here to see? Asuma? His surname is Sarutobi. He's the son of the Hokage. Chiriku and Asuma were always allied with the Hokage over the daimyo. Then, when Asuma killed your father, he sent you to Chiriku to ensure that we would never again stand against the daimyo. Chiriku is the one who betrayed the daimyo. He didn't save the bodies to help the daimyo, but to add to the war machine for when Konoha rises up. Your father wasn't a traitor, he was a patriot. Sora listened to what the man was saying. How can I believe what you say? Furido sighed. Has Chiriku never told you who your father was? Sora shook his head. Furido nodded. Then that's proof enough. That nagging voice in you saying what Chiriku is saying doesn't make sense, followed that voice. Don't let yourself be deceived. Your father was a patriot and he was murdered by Asuma and Chiriku. If you need further proof, then know this. I was there when your father sealed part of the Nine Tails into you. I can offer you more access to it. Upon your command, you can summon its strength. Use it to avenge your father. Furido would then use the 5 elements unseal technique to open a part of the seal on Sora's power. Sora felt it flow through him. He heard the roar and sensed an old memory. In this way, Sora knew that what Furido was saying must be true. Tears of betrayal began to roll down his cheeks. Furido put his hand on Sora's shoulder. Your father would have been so proud of you, Sora. Furido then disappeared. Sora thought about everything. He saw imprints of the Nine Tails as memories and imprints of his own. His father truly was killed by Asuma and Chiriku. That explained why Chiriku was always so cold to him. He lied to me. That bastard lied to me. He kept thinking about Chiriku more and more. He then proceeded to run toward the Hokage monument, searching for the Hokage's home, all the while the sun was setting over the village. Asuma! Naruto and Karin were talking when Sasuke and Konohamaru were playing around with each other. Man, Naruto said as he looked over the bite marks on Karin's arm. They made you guys do that? I'm sorry, he said. It's not your fault. We just got swept up in a bad village. Why didn't you come to Konoha instead? Naruto asked. My mom told me it was because Konoha was a close friend of the Uzumaki, but when the Uzumaki needed them most, they weren't there. My parents saw things that they could never shake, and they said that if Konoha had been there, the Uzoshio would still be here. Naruto lowered his head. I'm sorry to hear about that, but Konoha is a great place to live, and Mr. Hirazen's even planning to help me reform my clan eventually. Why don't you move here to Konoha? We'll take care of you, and then we can rebuild the clan together. Karin was surprised. She looked at Sasuke and then down at her own garb. I don't think that we can, she said. We have responsibilities right now that we have to take care of. Maybe one day, but not now. Naruto nodded. I understand. It was at about then that Chiriku and Asuma appeared. We're about to head out and start searching for the ones who stole the bodies. Before we go, we're gonna drop you and Sasuke off at the inn and collect Sora. Does that sound good? Karin nodded. Sasu, time to go. Sasuke walked over to Karin. Naruto pulled out a piece of paper. Here, this is my phone number. Send me a text when you get home. I'd like to get to know more about my cousins. I didn't think I had any family left, and the idea that I have more family out there is exciting. Karin took it. I don't have a phone, but I'll figure something out. She got up and began to follow Chiriku and Asuma. Naruto followed them to see them off, while poor Konohamaru remained tied to a chair in the darkness. Hello? They walked to the outside. As soon as they passed through the doors, they saw him in the distance. Is that Sora? Chiriku asked. Hey Sora, over here! Sora then ran toward them before descending to all fours. Chiriku was shocked. He had a bad feeling about this. Sora tackled both Chiriku and Asuma, a red bubbling chakra around him. At that moment, Naruto would tackle Sora off of them with his own version 1 cloak activated. Sora rolled before getting to his feet. Naruto stood there against him. So, you're like me, Naruto said. Sora, what's gotten into you? You lied to me, Chiriku. You and Asuma killed my father. You never told me the truth. You were the traitors. Who told you that? Asuma asked. Sora rushed at them again and pushed them back. My father's friend, Furido, did. One of the Guardian Ninja you failed to kill. Sora, Asuma said. There was nobody on the team named Furido. Sora was confused. What? Chiriku sat up. Sora, you're right about one thing. I lied to you. I didn't tell you the truth. Your father was a man named Kazuma. He was one of the more powerful shinobi in the group. He was the one who sealed the part of the Nine Tails into you. He wanted to use you as a weapon when the Guardian Ninja capable of using Limelight sided with us, but we rescued you from that situation. Why didn't you tell me? Sora demanded to know. Because we didn't want you looking into it, Asuma said. The reason being, we never killed your father. Sora was shocked. My father's alive? Asuma nodded. Chiriku then spoke. Likely the one you talked to was Kazuma. Did he have long white hair and a scar on the left side of his face? Sora nodded. Then that was Kazuma, Chiriku said. Sora fell to his knees. I'm so confused. Suddenly he doubled over. Ugh. Chiriku came close to him. Sora, what's wrong? He let out a roar as his energy spiked. He's transforming. The seal was broken. At about that moment, they noticed an orb forming in the sky. The jutsu is beginning, Asuma said. I need to get to one of the bodies now. If I can destroy one, I can stop the technique. Asuma ran inside and told the receptionist to call up Team Ro and have them start taking out the other bodies in the other directions. Asuma then ran outside and began heading toward one of the bodies himself. Meanwhile, Chiriku and the others stood there as Sora took on his version 2 cloak. Naruto began backing up. Can you match that, Naruto? Karin asked. Naruto shook his head. I activated version 2 once, but it didn't end well. Haven't tried since. Sora rushed at him and began to attack Naruto. Naruto managed to defend himself, but as their two chakras collided, Naruto found his own cloak being corrupted by the version 2 cloak of Sora. Naruto's hand was in version 2 while the rest of his body had been left in version 1, but slowly the crimson shell was trying to climb his arm. He was trying to will it to stay. Sora attempted to then attack Karin, but Chiriku jumped in the way, taking the shot and falling to the ground with a cry. Karin caught him. As Sora went in to finish him, Karin screamed. Suddenly, Sora disappeared. Karin was confused. What happened? Naruto spoke. Summoning jutsu. Kazuma must have summoned Sora to his location. Naruto looked down at his hand. Are you okay? Karin asked. Naruto nodded. I think I can reseal it, but dealing with Sora is going to be dangerous. My chakra resonates with his, meaning that if he's in version 2 and we touch, I'll start entering it too. Then we have 2 issues on our hands. With a growl of determination and focus, Naruto seals the power back up inside of him. Karin looks at the wounded Chiriku. She then rolls up her sleeve. Master, bite my arm. Chiriku looks up and shakes his head. No, I can't. I won't. Not after what those people did to you. She shakes her head. Don't be silly, just do it, please. Chiriku thinks about it and sees the attack building in the sky. Fine. He bites into her arm, drawing tears of pain. This returns Chiriku to his full strength, healing him. He then attempts to return the favor with the Mystic Palm technique to heal her arm in the hopes that it wouldn't scar. He stands. We need to go help Asuma now, he said. The group proceeds to run out toward the direction Asuma went. When they get there, they see Asuma on the defensive, Sora and Kazuma on the attack together. They rush in to help. Chiriku joins the fight against Kazuma, but Sora breaks off to face Naruto, Karin, and Sasuke. Sora jumps at them only for Naruto to jump in the way and push Sora off. His hand becomes corrupted by the version 2 shell. Naruto, be careful, Karin yells. It's fine, I'm fine. If anything, maybe it'll help me get through the Shellosaurus. Maybe I can break through. The two of them begin to fight, and slowly but surely Naruto continues to grow more and more corrupted. All the while, Asuma and Chiriku are on the defensive. Despite outnumbering the two of them, it still seems like Kazuma and Sora are winning. Karin attempts to summon her adamantine chains and hopes that their sealing abilities will help Naruto. Sasuke stands there by himself. He looks on and begins to wonder what he can do. He's not as strong as the others, or as smart. He feels helpless. You're far from helpless, a voice came to him. He couldn't see who said it, but he knew. Mama, he said. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He remembered when Chukaku used to do the same thing. Remember what I taught you, Chukaku's voice said. At about that time, Karin and Naruto were battered and bruised, weakened but victorious. Sora had been returned to normal, and a new seal was placed on him to keep the power inside. But at the same time, Chiriku and Asuma were pushed back by Kazuma, whose strength had outperformed theirs tremendously. Asuma and Chiriku were sent flying back and left barely conscious. Karin and Naruto, knowing that they had no other choice, ran in to counter this and try to reverse the situation on Kazuma, but considering that they were already so weak, there wasn't anything they could really do. Eventually, they too were knocked back. Kazuma was the last one standing, victorious. Karin lay there, Naruto hardly conscious beside her. As Kazuma approached, he spoke. It's a shame that you can never understand the truth of what I'm fighting for. Your village is a military superpower unto itself, and if ever pushed into a conflict with the rest of the country, it would destroy everything. You're going to murder countless men, women, and children, Karin shouted. Kazuma sighed. A small price to pay for the security of the nation. Just sit there and watch. You'll be safer here. Karin attempted to rise to her knees. I will stop you. Kazuma shook his head. Foolish girl. It didn't have to end this way. Kazuma brought his staff to bear, ready to finish her off. That was when Sasuke stepped between her and him. Sasu, no! Run away! He shook his head. I'll protect you now, he said. Kazuma laughed. What could one as weak as you do, he asked. Sasuke closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He formed a half-ram sign as he extended his hand down. Chiriku opened his eyes to see it. Impossible. How can he know how to do that? Welcoming approach. 1,000-armed murder. It takes years to master the gift of the hermits, and years longer to master this technique. What kind of prodigy is this? Sasuke forms the chakra avatar and proceeds to use it to pummel Kazuma. Kazuma is struck. After being hit, his temper flares. He properly defends himself. Sasuke walks forward as his technique follows. Hitting the ground, Kazuma spits blood in rage. So what? You have a gimmick like the old man. It won't save you. He rushes Sasuke, but Sasuke doesn't back down. All at once, he shouts. Every arm strikes out at Kazuma in an instant, hitting him and sending him flying back. He collides with the body of the Guardian Ninja preparing Limelight and is knocked into the beam. He takes the entirety of the electric pulse of the attack. He cries out as his body is fried. The voltage is so vicious that his body catches fire. He knocks the body over, both being set on fire and perishing together. With that, the Limelight technique is ended. Karin sits there as Chiriku watches in awe. The avatar vanishes. but suddenly Sasuke falls over. Karine scrambles to her feet and runs to him. She lifts him up as Chiriku follows behind. "Sasu," she asks. "Sasu, are you okay?" Chiriku checks on him. He's still alive, just unconscious. No wonder. He's got an impressive chakra well, but hasn't mastered this technique. It's probably very harsh on him. He just needs some rest. Chiriku looks at the burning bodies, watching both of his former comrades, one traitor and the other not, turn to ash. "Maybe it's always been better this way," Chiriku said. "I had thought that for a time that maybe Kazuma was right. Maybe there was too much power in Konoha. Maybe we did need a deterrent. But in honesty, I don't think power like this should be in any one person's hands." As the night passed, morning came. Overnight, Kazuma's compatriots had all been defeated and the bodies captured. Without the complete set, there would be no use in trying to utilize limelight again, so Chiriku ordered to have the bodies cremated and interred in Konoha's cemetery as heroes. Despite Kazuma's extremes, he was also interred there. Asuma believed that even if his means weren't correct, his ideals were selfless and all for the sake of the nation. That seemed enough to qualify him. Everyone rested from their battles, but eventually the time came where they had to leave. As they were readying to go, Chiriku spoke. "I think it's best that you stay here in Konoha," he said. "What? Why?" Karine asked, shocked that Chiriku would say such a thing. Chiriku began to explain. "Konoha is the best place for you. You will be protected here, and as Uzumaki, it's best that your clans stick together. You, Naruto, and Sasuke are the future of your people, and the only chance that your village can ever come back. I would be selfish to keep you all to myself." "But what about us?" Karine said. "Why can't we make the decision about our lives?" she said. Chiriku knelt down with her and Sasuke. "Because in the end, you have a responsibility. And it's not to me, nor to Sora, nor to the Fire Temple. Your responsibility is to your clan." Chiriku seemed like he was beginning to lose composure. "It truly was nice to meet you two, and I promise to write and visit when I can." Karine and Sasuke began to cry as he hugged them. Even Sora was having a hard time fighting back emotion. He joined in on the hug as well. After the moment passed, Chiriku pulled back. "Asuma will take care of you. Mind what he says, alright?" Karine and Sasuke nod. They then watch as Chiriku walks away. Naruto, standing nearby, puts his hands on their shoulders. "Your master is a really awesome guy. I'm glad he let you stay. I could use a family, and from what he's told me, so can you." And that's where we're gonna call it. That was the last episode I had planned. I'd like to think that Karine and Sasuke helped Naruto rebuild their village. That being said, even if this is the last planned episode, if we get enough views and enough people want to see more of it, we might make a special 4th part. If you would like to see that, tell us about it down below and leave a like. This will help us know how much you enjoyed it and how much you want to see more. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell too. Anyway, until next time, peace out.